So that's World Product Day, just giving more attention to the product and manufacturers at the core of that. Now let's head to the global space now with Will Ibong. And I see one news that she has is Bitcoin. I thought it was Laddie's space, but I mean, when
Oh, yes.
they say success has a lot of siblings and family members.
Oh
So
my goodness.
Bitcoin is looking successful now.
Yeah, so now
Will
I
has
have to,
decided to
to,
stay on
yes, it's my
Bitcoin.
family, it's my relative, you know. I have
Okay.
to, you know how it works.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. So let's see, Bitcoin soared past $111,000 on Thursday, hitting a new all-time high. And the surge is driven by optimism around U.S. crypto regulations, strong institutional demand, and economic concerns following Moody's U.S. debt downgrade. Now, a pro-crypto push from President Trump's administration and a key Senate vote on stablecoin rules have also boosted sentiment. Even JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, a longtime skeptic, now says the bank will let clients buy Bitcoin. Now, telco giant telecommunications company BT Group lifted its dividend after reporting a 25% jump in free cash flow to £1.6 billion, despite a 2% drop in annual revenue. Profit before tax rose 12% to £1.33 billion, driven by cost savings and fewer impairments. Adjusted EBITDA edged up to £8.21 billion. Openreach saw strong growth, while consumer and business units posted lower revenues. Now, BT reaffirms that its free cash flow target of £1.5 billion for the new fiscal year. Now, Japanese car maker Honda will add a fourth assembly line at its Gujarat plant by 2027, boosting annual output by 650,000 units and making it Honda's largest motorcycle plant globally. The 9.2 billion rupee, that's about $110 million, will create 1,800 jobs and focus on 125cc motorcycles. Capacity across the countries will rise to 7 million units annually. Now, the move comes after Honda hit 70 million units produced in India, its biggest motorcycle market. Now, Nike will start selling directly on Amazon in the U.S. again, ending a 5-year hiatus. The company had pulled out in 2019 to focus on direct-to-consumer sales and avoid counterfeit concerns on Amazon's third-party marketplace. A Nike spokesperson said the brand is expanding digital partnerships, including Amazon, and enhancing retail experiences with tools like AI-powered search. Amazon confirmed it will soon offer a wider range of Nike products and said it's giving independent sellers time to sell through overlapping inventory. The move boosts Amazon's push to attract premium brands following its recent luxury tie-up with Saks Fifth Avenue. Now, the EU will begin imposing tariffs on Russian fertilizers in July, facing them through 2028 to reduce reliance and cut funds to Moscow. Over 25% of EU nitrogen fertilizers come from Russia and Belarus. Farmers oppose the move, citing low cost and strong logistics, but Brussels says it will boost EU production and curb indirect Russian gas exports. Now, the UK government began the 2025-2026 financial year on a weaker fiscal footing, borrowing more than analysts had forecast. According to the Office for National Statistics, public sector net borrowing in April hit £20.2 billion, well above the £17.9 billion predicted by economists. The figures come despite a downward revision to borrowing for the previous financial year, now estimated at £148.3 billion, down from £151.9 billion. Analysts said higher borrowing may add pressure on government finances, particularly as policymakers weigh spending commitments ahead of the next general election. Now we have our London correspondent, Juliana Olayinka, over there to give us a breakdown of what's going on, really. You know, we saw the inflation data. Good morning, Juliana. Let me just start off with that. We saw inflation data come out yesterday, higher than expected, you know, a spike in that. And Britain is already starting this new financial year with higher than expected borrowing figure, raising fresh concerns about the state of public finances. Now, with Britain, the UK borrowing more than expected in April, just over £20 billion. What kind of pressure does that put on the finance minister, on Rachel Reeves, ahead of next month's big spending review?
Good morning, Will. Well, you said it all, really. I think Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is under pressure. I think she got some brief respite late last week, of course, when we got um, quite good GDP figures showing that the economy was the fastest growing economy in the G7 in Q1 of 2025. That surprising 0.7% uplift. But as you said, yesterday we got pretty disappointing inflation figures, the highest they've been in more than a year at 3.5%. And then, as you said, quite rightly, this morning, the Office for National Statistics have shown that borrowing in April was at £20.2 billion. The fiscal year has gotten off to a really poor start. And one of the reasons why borrowing was more expensive is because there was more spending on benefits, which, of course, isn't great. I think we're showing pictures from Geneva, which isn't about the UK economy. But I think what Rachel Reeves wanted is that in October, of course, they mentioned, scrapping the winter fuel payment and also trying to be fiscal responsible. But then, politics happened and the rise of reform is there. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, he sort of backtracked on winter fuel payments, which basically means, Will, the Chancellor is going to have to, scratch her brain harder to try and find a solution. And so it is really difficult at the moment in the UK for this Chancellor, who is also, of course, as we all know, struggling to try and contain runaway tariffs that are coming out of the US. So, as I said, not great, considering that we've had national insurance contributions that was supposed to really help buffer the government's tax purse. And it hasn't done that because the results, of course, speak for themselves.
We'll wait and see how that plays out for Rachel Reeves. But still on the theme of fiscal pressure, but this time in global health, a high-level panel at the 78th World Health Assembly in Geneva is spotlighting how smart financing models could close the care gap, especially in cancer and cardiovascular disease. Juliana, you were live at the event. What stood out most about how countries can actually fund fairer healthcare, even as budgets continue to tighten?
Yes, but yes, I was in Geneva for the World Health Assembly earlier this week, which, as we know, is a gathering, particularly more high level, because, we're a difficult time at the moment in terms of donations and aid and figures for health, because we know that the dollar for
Julia,
2025
okay.
membership donation, which means there are hundreds of thousands of organizations basically penniless and broke at the moment. So this particular gathering was of more importance. The movement health is basically a bridge that puts together health practitioners with locally led best to reach the underserved. These are topics that all of us are familiar with. I think we all know somebody who knows somebody who struggles to get access to health. And even those of us who are well versed in health academia, shall we say, we can sometimes struggle if we're having symptoms of various causes. And so I think, at this particular event, what they were trying to do is find solutions, mostly using AIRs, um, to health access, which is so crucial. At 45, we're still having these same discussions.
Juliana, I think we're
And
having...
essentially, that is what the gathering was about.
Okay, Juliana, we're having technical issues. Internet seems to not want us to have this conversation, but I'm sure we can explore this some other time. It's a shame that the internet is interrupting this conversation, but it was great having your perspective,
That's a
Juliana
shame.
Olainka, our London correspondent over there in London. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Morning. It's always great to have you. So, Ini, it's just a shame we couldn't have that conversation because, seeing that AI, that's the way the world is moving towards, so AI-driven data. We've also had, the first in Nigeria, the first surgical, surgery, with AI. So it's like this is where the world is at right now. So the positioning of the World Health Assembly, the World Health Summit, is like, how can we drive AI in the healthcare sector to give affordable healthcare to people, the underserved, the people who can't afford, this, expensive healthcare. How can we make AI provide affordable healthcare? That's what they're just looking at. And,
Yeah.
monies have been pledged, over $170 billion right now, people are pledging. So we'll
Yeah,
see
well,
that it's not going to be all talk and all...
when you come to the funds being pledged, that brings another issue.
Yes.
Because, we've been talking about climate and how much has been pledged, especially for the emerging economies, But talking about AI, it's the norm now. It's been accepted as the norm for AI.
Sure.
But I think for Africa, the conversation has always been, how do we make it ours? Let it solve our problem. Let's not just follow the wider conversation. Let's domesticate this AI. Let's have our own software that will make the robots or the programming and all of that to solve our own problem, our own
Maybe
way.
understand our language.
Yes, of course.
Definitely.
Of course, that's no big deal. In China, they have things that speak their own language.
Yes.
So why can't we do ours? I guess
Definitely.
that's the next challenge for us.
Definitely will move to that level. Thank you.
All right, Will, thank you so much. All right, just before we let you go, it was a red market at the NGX here in Nigeria yesterday. The market lost 0.10%, but it's still around 109,000, so it closed at 109,619.10. The market cap is still around 68 trillion, looking for when it to be 70 trillion. We can do it. Let's move the market. Activity was all in the red. Top gainers yesterday, RT, Briscoe, Unicel, and livestock. Livestock seems to be gaining some attention, and so we see it reflecting the counters right there. I thought we'll have that counters there. Banking in the red. Consumers on the flip side. Industrial in the red. Insurance, more than 1% in the green yesterday. So the penny stocks are getting attention again. So maybe you want to look that way. Oil and gas still dragging behind us, 0.5% at the close of trade yesterday. At 1 p.m., Ladi Williams will be here with Will Ibong, and you have intraday market numbers and see if the market has recovered by then. And of course, they'll give you other stories happening in the world of business. That's at 1 p.m. So don't miss that. Ladi and Will at 1 p.m. But for me, I'll be signing out now. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning. I'm Ini John Mekwa.